A very good evening to you. I'm Lisa Lord, and my special guest is the Director of Clinical Services at the Substance Abuse Foundation, Inc., Ms. Allison Gotip. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're most welcome. Now, we're here at Verdon House in St. John, one of your two treatment centers, and this one specifically is dedicated to male clients.
Correct.
Tell me about the work at Verdon House.
Okay, thank you. We have been in operation for 20 years. This one is specifically for residential men who are battling with the disease of addiction. We are able to house just over 50 men at one given time. They start off coming into the primary program where they orientate themselves to what we do here, which is basically group therapy, individual counseling, getting to understand the root of some of their problems and their challenges. We've realized that trauma is a predominant factor for a lot of clients, and therefore we do have a trauma specialist who's able to work through that with them, and they can then transition into the second stage program where we look at reintegrating them back into society, because as we always say, we're looking to set them up for success. So it's more than just putting down the drugs and the alcohol, but also what we can do for these men in terms of letting them reintegrate back into society successfully. Some of them come in with skills, some of them don't come in with skills, and we do work through that with them whilst they're here at Verdon House.
You mentioned trauma.
Yes.
What kind of trauma are we talking about?
Okay, so when we talk about trauma, it is, in layman's terms, they've always said anything, as a child, when they're describing trauma, anything that makes you pee your pants. So anything that you interpret as trauma, so it can be things like abandonment from parents, parents not being in the household, primary caregivers not maybe giving them attention. It could be what we call adverse childhood experiences, which is not being able to develop properly in terms of emotional regulation, not having the caregivers in the house expressing themselves correctly, or healthily, I should say, having some unhealthy behaviors in terms of being exposed to things at a young age. And what tends to happen a lot sometimes is persons who allow children to become parents. So it's what we call parentification, where the children take on the responsibility and the role of mother or father. And that can also be quite traumatic, especially for the developing brain of a young person.
And these traumatic experiences sometimes has led to their drug usage.
Because once a traumatic event happens, it's how the person experiences. So imagine, just God forbid, both me and you were in a car accident, how you interpret that compared to how I interpret that. Our experience of that event is what's crucial. And then we're going to go into how we're going to cope with that experience. And some persons do turn to alcohol or substances.
So you said there are two different types, two levels, I should say, programs.
Yes.
When you first enter, and then there's a secondary program.
Correct.
Tell me what happens in both.
Okay. So as I said, with primary, they initially come in and it's just about settling them into the program, building that therapeutic link with a counselor that has identified someone who has the skills and experience for that individual person. It's also doing group therapy, because what we're building here is a community, which is so important for anybody going through any challenge. We know how important it is for that community. So there's group therapy. We start to get to know them in terms of their background. And not only do we do that, we also, whoever their support system is. So sometimes it's family members, or sometimes it might just be a friendly neighbor or someone who knew them when they were at school. And so we bring that support system in very early. So we do an assessment on the support system. We ask them certain issues or challenges that they're having with this person who's come into treatment. So it's very much a holistic approach. When they first come in, we also look at not just the addiction, but we look at them where they are physically. So we have an RN, we look at them psychologically, we have a psychiatrist, we have a psychologist on board. So we're really giving them a complete assessment, because that is the foundation of the program that we work here, both at Verdon and Marina House. Once they're orientated and have gotten used to the program and done a lot of individual work, then at the end of 90 days, then they can transition into second stage. As I said, that's then looking at their skill set, because in primary, we would have done an assessment on where they're at, what skills do they have, Have they finished school? Do they have any learning difficulties? Is there any cognitive challenges? What are their strengths? And in primary, it helps us to observe what some of their strengths are. So, if it's farming, we get them onto a particular farming program. If we realize there's computer skills that they're really interested in, we do have a computer center here as well. So we are part of the TVET, and we are a TVET center. So we encourage that, how to use the internet, how to, do basic programming, and looking at different skills. So we also have a case manager and a social worker on our team, because that's important. We look and help them with housing, etc., once they go into second stage as well.
What happens if I've done in 90 days in primary, I've not been successful?
Okay, so if you completed the 90 days, we still have continuing care, because what we've realized is research shows that you need to keep connected with those clients at least for 5 years. So I always say you're going to get tired of our face at Verdun and Marina House, because we are in your face, because we become part of your support system. So therefore they go into continuing care, which means that they're no longer residents here, but we have an off-site office where they can go and see the counsellor, and we also have weekly groups, both for the men and for the females. So we're constantly keeping tabs on them, ensuring that we are helping them to be successful.
Now that's Verdun House. In 2015, you
Yes.
opened Marina House
Exactly.
for your female clients. Tell me about the work of Marina House and their children as well.
Okay, right. So originally when Verdun House started, it was both male and female facility, but you can imagine how that went. Relationships and being distracted, etc. So as you said, 2015, we opened up Marina House, and we have the same program. What it is, though, is gender specific. So the trauma groups look at trauma slightly differently, because of the specification in terms of females and what they go through, etc. And what we've done there is more of a house setup, and women can come with their children, as we've had in the past, because we understand that relationship is very key. And some of the barriers for women coming into treatment was because, well, what am I going to do with my children? Who's going to look after them? So we've been able to do that and allow women to still focus on themselves while still having their children. And that's why it's so important to involve the family or support system. We've reached out to welfare. The childcare board have been phenomenal in terms of supporting those females who do have, childcare issues, etc. So it's the same program transitioning through to primary to second stage. They have the opportunities. We've also got a small farm there where we started to grow peppers, etc. So a lot of the ladies are working doing pepper mash, etc. So we really do try and make sure that it's a very individualized program for both Verdun and Marina.
And how have the children adapted? Because obviously it's a completely different environment to their home.
Right. So it depends on the age of the child, because obviously, as you can imagine, there's some who are going to school. So in that way, we can provide transportation, ensuring that they go to school, etc. And for the younger ones, we have had so many donations of brand new stuff, and it's almost like a home away from home, or probably better for some of them, unfortunately, than their own living conditions. So we do have creative art therapists, and we do have experts who have up to about 40 years experience working with adolescents and children. So we do make them part of the treatment process. So ensuring that the children, how they used to view mummy, how they used to view their father, looking at maybe some concerns, some maybe behavioral challenges, because as you can imagine, sometimes children in that environment do develop behavioral challenges and have issues regulating their emotions. So we do work with them closely in terms of that.
And do you have a situation where perhaps mommy was using drugs while she was pregnant and that has caused issues?
Yes, we have had that. It's few and far between, but we have worked closely with the pediatric unit there at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital as well. We have a very good working relationship with them. And so, it is also because we see addiction as a brain disease. It's not to condemn mothers or condemn fathers. We've had situations where they're coming as a couple. So one goes to Verdun, one goes to Marina, and they also have a child. So how do we facilitate that? We really need to make sure that they have hope, they have healing, and it's not about condemning them, but looking at a way that they can be better parents for the child, and obviously the child developing healthily.
Let's look at the whole issue of addiction. Do you think that people understand how easy it is to become addicted to a particular drug?
I don't think so. I think when we look at addiction, we sometimes have a one-way view of what an addict looks like, right? Normally it's black, it's a man, and it's somebody who might be in Nelson Street looking through the garbage, and that's what we think of as addiction. What we know, though, as I said before, is addiction is a brain disease. So imagine if you are so thirsty and someone tells you you can't have that water, and you're seeing it, you're feeling it, it's psychological, it's physical, you're having withdrawals, it's something that you know is not right or good for your body, but you just need to have it, right? And having that and trying to understand, can I imagine someone telling me not to have that water, and I can see the water in front of me? So it's that compulsion. It's chronic, it's progressive. I don't think we sometimes understand that, because I think a lot of times is that we see it as a moral failure. Why don't they just sort themselves out? Just stop it. Just put down the drink, put down the cocaine, put down the marijuana, and let's just stop it. But it's more than that. So when you understand it's a brain disease, like when you have cancer, you know, when you have diabetes, it needs to be treated. And what tends to happen is that we tend to focus on from the neck down and not look at from the neck up.
Now, the average age of your clients, both here at Verdon House and at Marina House?
Okay, so we have a wide spectrum. We do take in residential clients from the age of 18. So we've seen persons just on the brink of 18, and we've had persons over the age of 60. What's really interesting is, because we do a lot of research, we found that older people are coming to treatment more than ever before. Right, which is really interesting. And the bracket that we see also is the 27 to 40-year-old age range. Now, I'm putting that down to your brain's completely developed, and now you've started to get consequential thinking. You're starting to see the consequences of your drug use, right? We still always have the younger persons, the 18, the 19-year-olds coming in. You know, some of them stay for shorter periods of time, so we always have to make sure that our treatment plan fits into that still adolescent brain. Because what we have found is that even though you have persons who may come in and say, well, I'm 27, when you put drugs or alcohol or any substance in, we have to treat them almost from the day that they started using or being exposed to that drug. Now, what's interesting also in our research, when we look at how young they started, the numbers are starting to decline. So what do I mean by that? I mean that we're starting to see 7-year-olds, persons who are saying that they were exposed to alcohol, they were exposed to marijuana, they were exposed to other drugs at young ages, at 6, 7, 8 primary school ages. And when we look further into it, we find that who would have exposed them to it? It's normally in the household or the neighborhood. So we really do have an issue, and this is not a fear tactic, but this is reality of the information that we've gotten doing our own research, because we do have a dedicated research team who are always looking and being able to track clients. And I think that's important, especially to get our own information as a people, as a culture, what's happening here in the Caribbean, in the region, and it's not necessarily the same as what's happening in Western societies. So with that information, we can see that the primary school, the younger, the exposure to that is very concerning for me as a director here.
And that's why you started Teen Intervene. Tell me about that program for your adolescents.
Right. So especially throughout COVID, we do have a helpline. What we started to see was lots of calls coming in from family members, from young people, from persons who are concerned about young people. And there was this big need. We had already planned, thank goodness for the Maria Holder Memorial Trust, that we were going to build a family centre, and that was to help the females to, you know, have their children in a safe environment when they come in for treatment. What I saw was a need that we needed to also invite the adolescents and children into this program, because it's so key. Yes, we talk about treatment, but we also need to look at prevention and look at intervention as well. So we've launched a Teen Intervene. We started off with our Easter camp, and we had, it started off with, we just do it for gender specific. Once again, we've done it for the females, and we're due to do one June the 5th and the 6th, which is under the Teen Intervene, and it's called Confident Me, both for the boys and the girls. That Teen Intervene is not just for those children who are maybe struggling with substance use or experimenting with substances, but also for those who have behavioral challenges, those who are just not able to cope at this moment. Because we started to see that families were ringing up concerned parents, guidance counselors, saying, what can we do with this child? They just don't seem to be coping well, especially with this isolation that we had with the lockdown, not having that link to community, and something just doesn't seem to be right. Because I know that we have trained professionals here who can deal with it, who can look, who can do the child psychology, we are able to have this program up and running, and I'm so excited for it because we've really had lots of feedback and also very good positive feedback, because what we're doing with these young persons is not just running a camp and leaving. We are using the camp, having the camp, allowing them to build self-esteem, self-confidence. What does it mean to be a boy? What does it mean to be a young man? What does it mean to be a female? Is it just all about external looks? But also in that time, we're observing them, and then we're actually doing recommendations. They need further individual counseling. So that's how Teen Intervene has been birthed.
All right, Ms. Gotip, I want to discuss the whole impact of COVID-19 some more, but we do have to take a break here. Stay with us. You're watching One on One.
Hi, I'm Caroline Gittins, a quarantine officer with the Veterinary Services Department of the Ministry of Agriculture. There's a disease called African swine fever that is affecting domestic and wild pigs worldwide. Even though it is not harmful to humans, it has the potential to wipe out every pig in Barbados. If you or your family members are traveling to Barbados, apply for a meat permit from the Veterinary Services Department. This permit tells you if it is safe to bring pork products from the country that you intend to travel to. Purchase products only in their original packaging that are clearly labeled with the inspection stamp. That means no bacon or sausages from the deli in the supermarket or from a butcher's shop. Do not cook it, since the disease can survive high temperatures. When you reach Barbados, we ask that you declare all your meat products to the customs officer. We need your help in keeping Barbados safe from African swine fever.
Welcome back. Ms. Gotip, before the break, you were discussing the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, especially on younger persons. You had parents calling up, guidance counselors, etc. How has COVID-19 impacted Verdun and Marina House in general?
Okay, so COVID, as I've realized throughout the period of COVID, is that addiction thrives in crisis. So we saw an increase of persons, residential clients coming in both to Verdun and Marina House. It was almost like they wanted a place of safety. I think because of how it was such an uncertain time, and still continues to be on an uncertain time, they wanted to get themselves right. I kept on hearing that I need to get myself right. I don't know, strange things are happening and I need to get myself right. So we saw an increase in residential clients. And for us, as you can imagine, we had to also make sure that we stayed as much as possible COVID-free. It also had an impact on our referring agencies, which are normally sometimes from prison and sometimes from the psychiatric hospital. Both institutions would have had their high levels of outbreaks for the COVID period. So that did have an impact. What we found though was that we then had to diversify our treatment services and have things like outpatient, right? We've done a lot of telehealth, which meant that we had to use a lot of phone calls, using a lot of Zoom packages, etc., to keep connected to people. Because even if they couldn't come into the program, it was key and imperative to help these people going through this crisis. We also realized that there was an increase in relationship issues, because now you're having persons coming together, spending more time with each other than ever before, and the frustration would appear, persons losing their jobs. So that really created for us even more impetus on us diversifying our treatment services. COVID did have what you would say a negative impact on us in terms of our donors and those who would normally donate. We were so lucky to still have persons like the Rousings, who are our main beneficiaries, but also where we would have an annual golf tournament. We haven't had that for 2 years, and that's a big fundraising. But needless to say, what we were adamant throughout the time was that we were not closing these doors. At such a time where the persons, our staff, are seen as frontline workers, I know sometimes we may be overlooked because obviously you've got the hospital, etc. We are still a healthcare facility, and I could not sleep, have a good conscience thinking, well, we'll close the doors until COVID passes, because we don't know when COVID is going to pass. And people were so desperate. We had persons turning up at our gates just wanting to come in. Right. So therefore, what we had to put in place also, because I was still mindful of the safety of the rest of the community, was to ensure that every person had a COVID-19 PCR test. We worked very closely with the Ministry of Health. They would be sending us their results directly. So we were able to still make the process as quick as possible for those persons to enter in and enter in safely whilst keeping the community safe. We were always very vigilant because, as you can imagine, those who have been addicted, their immune system is very much compromised. So we were working very closely with the COVID monitoring unit, who paid us numerous visits, ensuring that we were keeping up in terms of the protocols. We were educating persons, and what we were doing also was making sure we had groups. And ironically enough, we would have like these groups where we were talking about the news, what persons were thinking. We would have debates on, what do you think about the vaccination? Would you want to be vaccinated? And so just really, even throughout that time, empowering clients, making sure that they knew what was going on and they just weren't secluded and in a bubble, ignorant to what was happening with COVID as well.
You mentioned your relationship with the Ministry of Health and Wellness,
Yes.
and I know that they subsidize you about a third of your
Yes,
cost.
please.
That's correct?
Yes.
You also have a relationship with the psychiatric hospital.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Right. So the relationship with the psychiatric hospital is that they're actually the ones who do the referrals. Normally, when a person wants to come into treatment, they do need to go to the psychiatric hospital, and we know that has its stigma within itself. One thing that helped throughout COVID was because of the psychiatric hospital not necessarily wanting so many people to come in to do a long extended stay or do long extended assessments, that they were able to accommodate our clients to do assessments within a short period of time. Maybe they would just have to be there for 4 hours and then to do a referral. So they send referrals to us, and that's how we get subsidized by the Ministry of Health. So there's a very good working relationship with the assessment unit, the drug rehabilitation unit there. And so we work very much in tandem because it's key. And that's why we really do need to destigmatize mental wellness. When we look at addiction needs to be key in looking at mental wellness, because I'm sure there's many of us who we have some maybe questionable coping skills at times. And it's not just addiction. Mental wellness is really key. Right. And with that, we realized that addiction does carry a stigma with it. We have now rebranded ourselves. So we're now Verdun and Marina House, and we are now Spaces of Hope and Healing. I'm sure when you drove in, you would see it still says a place of healing from addiction. Mm-hmm. We've changed that now to Spaces of Hope and Healing, because that best exemplifies what we're doing here. We're no longer just focusing on addiction, which is part of mental wellness, but we're looking at your mental well-being. We're looking at conflict resolution. We're looking at emotional regulation. We're reaching out to employers, which we've always done, in terms of knowing your staff. Are they working at their best? Why do you think they're not working at their best? We're looking at, are you helping them in terms of ensuring that their well-being is looked after? We're going into families. We're now doing intervention. So we actually go into homes to help families and support systems to actually work as a unit, and rather than working against each other.
You mentioned the referrals from the psychiatric hospital. Mm-hmm. Your patients here traditionally don't pay. However, right. I'm a mother watching this program, or a father.
Yes.
And I realize that my child, and by child I mean 18, 19-year-old, yes, has some challenges. Mm-hmm. Can I get them in the program without paying?
Yes. Yes. As I said, it was subsidized by the Ministry of Health. We are also very self-sufficient. So as I would have mentioned before, our beneficiaries are fully aware of the needs of the clients, and therefore we will, the Ministry of Health, subsidize a third, but we actually meet the shortfall. We also look at self-sustaining ourselves. So we have a farm here, we have a bakery here, we have wonderful chicken, eggs, I'll just put that plug in. And it has increased. We have a farm here that is thriving. We have, so many openings. We produce chickens for, well-known restaurant outlets. So we're always looking to sustain ourselves. And that's why I think the organization, Verdun House especially, has been so successful in keeping its doors open at all times.
And you do have some clients that choose to pay because they want to come
here.
Yes.
Correct. So we do have what we call private paying clients. So they would come in. We do have persons who have come here successfully through the region. So once again, we work very closely with immigration. And we have had persons who are coming in from the region, because what we offer here, which is very unique, is not the standard 28-day program. Some persons want to go to those programs and they do work, but when you spend so many years having these challenges, in the throes of addiction, you really do need that long time to press pause. So yes, we do have private paying clients who come in, they pay privately. We will still need the medical report, the psychological report, but we do accept them in. And we do have payment plans as well for those who might not want to go to psych and actually have the means to come in here. And that's what's so interesting. And I really want to get over the point that addiction is no respecter of persons. I would have started off talking about, you assume it's a black male looking through a garbage. We have had every strata of society. And I mean that not to boast, but to understand that addiction is no respecter of persons. Every single one of us knows somebody who we have a suspicion might be drinking a little bit too much, might be just acting a bit strange. We're not too sure, but we think they're using some form of substance. So it's really important.
What's the drug of choice, the main drug of choice?
Okay, so we tend to have 3 prongs. It's alcohol, it's marijuana, and it's also crack cocaine, right? We have seen, especially in COVID, an increase in persons using prescription drugs as well, because it is seen as it's legal and it's not so much frowned upon, right? So when I say that we deal with all stratas of society, we have seen persons who are addicted to prescription drugs. And then we're talking about substance addiction, but there's also what we call process addictions. So we will have persons who are addicted to gambling. We've had persons who are just solely gamblers. We've had persons who, and we do have a very robust program in terms of sexual addiction, which some people may just be like,
offer that as well.
Yes. So that's why I'm saying that it would be remiss of me not to mention all those types of addictions as well as looking at mental wellness, mental well-being, and helping persons in terms of behavioral and emotional challenges.
Is one addiction harder to treat than the other?
No. It's quite simply no. Addiction is addiction is addiction. What I spoke about being chronic, progressive, you shouldn't be doing it, but you feel compelled, the withdrawals from that drug or that behavioral addiction is still the same. When you look at somebody who speaks about their gambling addiction and compare them to someone who has a crack cocaine, they're both speaking the same language. I know I should stop, but I couldn't. I realized that I was taking money. I realized that my family, my relationships were going down. I realized that even though I said just one more, bet on the horses or one more pull of the slot machine, it's still the same as someone who's addicted to crack cocaine.
We don't view it like that.
Correct.
And how big of an issue is perhaps gambling or sexual addiction versus drug addiction?
It is a very big issue. And what we see is a lot of cross addiction. So you would have, or you can have someone who's addicted to a substance and they also have a gambling issue, or someone who is addicted to alcohol, who's an alcoholic and has a sex addiction issue as well. So that's really key when they come into primary, when they come in as residential, that we really start peeling off the layers and really looking at the individual. Because as I said, this is not a place where it's just about putting down the drugs or the alcohol or telling them stop having sex so often. This is a place where we're going to deal with the actual core of what's going on. So imagine a volcano erupting and you're trying just to stop the volcano, but you need to look at all the things that are bubbling to the top.
Going back to what you said about sex addiction, how pervasive is sex addiction?
It's very pervasive. It's something that we don't like to speak about. It is, people think, well, you know what, if he has a lot of sex, there's nothing wrong with him. In fact, he's given props, he's given encouragement, right? But there is a very thin line between just liking sex on a regular basis compared to actually, and if you recall what I said about addiction, generally, it's chronic, it's progressive, it's insatiable, even though you know you shouldn't. And when you look at sex addiction, you will see that there's some of those traits. So you will have people missing work just to get sex. And if they can't get it from one place, they're going to go to another. They may lose money in terms of having sex because their partner may be like, this is just too much. There is
so they're paying for it.
Yeah, exactly. They're paying for it because then in their mind, that person is a transactional process. So, something for something. But beyond that, it is looking at your unhealthy association with sex and the sexual act. Sex can be a very beautiful thing, but when it becomes unhealthy, when it becomes unrealistic, when it's connected to pornographic material on a regular basis, as I said, you're missing work, it's impacting your family, you're losing money, it's something that's chronic. You said, I'm only going to do it this one time, but you find yourself continuously doing it. And as I would have mentioned before, in terms of cross addiction, so you have persons who are using two things at once. So they're having the sex addiction and they're having the crack cocaine or the alcohol. And therefore it becomes very murky, but it's what we call cross addiction. So they replace one addiction with another, or they have a dual situation where they're having both addictions working in tandem. So I would have spoken before about the substance addiction, but we also have process addiction. The two are very much merged, and addiction is addiction is addiction.
And why I asked if one is easier to treat than the other is because the ease with which you can get those that are legal versus those that are illegal.
Yeah. And I can understand that. And sometimes that's a gateway to other drugs as well. I think it's a perception that, well, if he's at the rum shop every day, it's not as bad as someone who's on crack cocaine, who's in the dope hole. Yeah. And that's where we're trying to change the perception. Addiction is addiction is addiction.
What do you want the average Barbadian to know about the work that you do at Verdant and Marina House?
Besides the fact that we do a phenomenal job, and I'm not just saying that because I've been here, but it is the most rewarding thing is to know that you have helped one person. I know we're just helping one person. It may just seem, well, all right, he's doing well. But research shows that when you help one person, you're actually helping 12 people, because you look at that person's child, you look at that person's parent. It is so rewarding to know that a mother can sleep knowing that we have helped her son or her daughter. It's rewarding to know that we are helping society as a whole. I know that the Prime Minister recently, I saw an article where she spoke about if she had a blank check and was able to give it to a place where there would be residential care for young people with behavioral issues, emotional issues. Us being able to do that in the Barbadian society is so key. Because you might think, well, that's not my issue, but it becomes your issue when you're getting robbed. It becomes your issue when you're realizing that we're spending so much money in treating and not necessarily in other areas that you think should happen. It's not a moral failure. I want persons to know that it's not a moral failure. There's a disease of addiction that Verdant and Marina have diversified their treatment services, not because out of a need. We cannot sleep easy knowing that we have 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, not only addicted, but also having behavioral challenges, not being able to communicate at such a time as this, because we need to look down the line and have long-term plans in what we're going to do to stem this tide of addiction, of behavioral challenges, because we still don't have the research to know how COVID has impacted our community, our society. And if the Barbadian public can come behind us and say, even be our cheerleader, help us, say, you know what, I want to sponsor that particular teenager. You know what, I have a concern here. I don't want to be malicious, as you say, but there's something happening with that person that I'm not too sure what's happening there. We do interventions, and it's okay to ask for help. No person's an island, so we do need to be able to say, I need help, and not to be judged or stigmatized because you need help.
Ms. Gotip, thank you so much for sitting and talking to us. We know that you and your team are doing an amazing job, and the results are showing as we will sit and talk with one of the clients here at Verdant House. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're most welcome. Stay with us. You're watching One on One.
Everything comes at a cost. And these days, no one profits from the loss, like when a child is forced to trade school day socialization for screen time study, when a disease decides to disrupt our daily routine, and suddenly, every one of us is coming undone, losing loved ones' lives and livelihoods, breath and breadwinners, families and festivals and freedoms. God, we feel like it's too much hassle to be human. We will always remember the years the earth spun quieter, but Mother Nature showed us how the simple act of standing still can wage war on an illness. So may we remember how to be our own army, how it takes cooperation for a community to build immunity, how unity can nurse us back to normalcy. Why stop at one family when we could save all?
Welcome back. As a result of confidentiality rules, our next guest is one of the former clients here at Verdon House, and we are obligated to keep his identity anonymous, but he has agreed to share his story. Sir, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, tell us first, at what age were you introduced to drugs?
Well, I was introduced to drugs at the age of 14 years old. I was still at school, and because of peer pressure, I was asked to be involved with the drug.
What type of drug?
That drug would be marijuana. I smoked from a very young age, and I didn't like the feeling at first, but as I kept on smoking, I got the hang of it, and would just want to smoke at any time and any chance that I got.
How long did you use marijuana for?
Well, I used marijuana for about 15 to 20 years from the start that I started.
How did you feed your habit?
Well, I would be given money. I would always have money, I'd be given money from my parents would give me money, and any chance that I got, I would also ask for money in order to sustain my habits, right? Out there when you to get drugs, I would try to sell anything I could sell. I would also steal to support my habit at any given moment that I can, start with petty theft of things that you won't really miss. And
what kind of things?
It would start with like people watches and and some money and thing, if you get the chance, you're going to carry and get money from your family, and they will miss it, and it continued like that for a long time.
Were you ever charged for stealing?
No, I was never charged for theft.
When did you know that you needed help?
Well, during the process of all the stuff that I was doing, it would be gradually getting worse, right? It would gradually be getting worse, and my life would become very unmanageable, I would be given a lot of trouble, getting in a lot of fights, and when my mother, because my mother would have a great part to play in my recovery too, she would be very upset in how I would be living my life, because I came up around the church too. I came up in church.
When you said upset about how you were living your life, explain.
Well, when I use drugs, obviously I would be drinking too. So
you were using alcohol as well?
Yes, alcohol is a drug too. So alcohol came hand in hand along with the drugs that I would be using. So I would be very loud and disorderly, all right, and give a lot of trouble. So it would be like hurtful for her, right? So this addiction would become a family disease also, because it won't really be like hurting myself. I would also be hurting the family too, and in a lot of legal issues, because I would be getting charged for I would be doing assaulting people, right? I would be driving without license, a lot of things that I should not be doing. I also was charged with marijuana already too.
Were you able to finish school?
Yes, I finished school, but I never completed my studies. I never really continued the studies. I went on to a tertiary level because I was also liming on the block a lot. I would also like to lime on the block and sell drugs and be with the bad company, right? But due to a lot of peer pressure that I was exposed to, I would be one of the bad people on the block.
So your mother was the one that made the call for you to get out?
Well, she initially took me places that I could be afforded to help, right? And the institutions that they have in Barbados, I would have been sent to them. Like She would carry me to the child care board and then to the probation office and say, well, this guy needs help. Many occasions I was taken to the police station to have a word with the sergeant in charge and be straightened out on my behavior on the road I was taking, and letting me know well, the road I was taking where it would take me down. I would never hear, I would never want to heed the call because I always thought that I was doing the right thing and nobody can tell me nothing, right?
So what was the breaking point?
Well, the breaking point at the first instance was being sent to prison. I was involved in a fight and wounded someone, and I was remanded. The case went to High Court and I was remanded into custody, and that was at a very young age. So after not liking the experience that I experienced up there, I said, well, I need to get some help. And I wasn't really needing help because I wanted the help. I needed help to get out of trouble, right? Because I was in big trouble. So I say to myself, because I was always thinking that I knew what was best for me. I was always smart and cunning. So I said, well, I need to get out of trouble so I can go and get help to get out of trouble. And at the first instance, it did not work because at that time, I came to Verdun House and they told me that, well, don't drink or don't smoke anything and come back the next day. You didn't have to go to any institution to get evaluated or anything like that. And this was way back in 2007. That was in 2007. The first instance when I came here, I was 28 years old. And I did what they told me and I came here, but I wasn't ready for no help. I just wanted to get out of trouble, so I didn't do anything that they wanted me to do. So I left the place. I leave and eventually I was back out on the same road I was on again, down the same rabbit hole and doing the same stuff again.
So then when did you come back? And what happened that you came back?
Well, I came back the very next year. I came back the very next year in 2008. And I came back because I was in the same trouble again, doing the same stuff again. And this was the only refuge, to get away. And that was my thing, just to get away. I didn't need any help. I didn't want no help. And to get my mother off of my back and other people off of my back, I'd go in and get help, And that did not work again because it was the same process over and over again. I didn't apply myself to the program. And I was back out again, doing the same things again. History repeating itself. And I was out there for about 4 years, getting arrested, getting in fights, in trouble.
Did you go to prison again?
No, I didn't go to prison again, but I was arrested again and again. But for some reason, I didn't go to prison, and it continued like that for 4 years. I was out there for 4 years, being beaten, and it didn't get better at all. I was running from myself. I was actually running from myself, and everybody I was getting work and not keeping the jobs, getting good jobs and not keeping the jobs all the time, and it went on like that over and over again until I was arrested again, and my plea again was for help. They said, well, we give you a chance, and I look back at my record and said, well, you're getting chances again. What gonna be different now? I said, well, I can try something different, I can do something different. But I was only fooling myself. I was caring about the drugs more than me. The drugs was the head point. Everybody else was wrong. Everybody else was the problem. I'm not the problem. You are the problem. I tried geographical changes. I tried moving from one district to another district, from one parish to the other parish, and it would be the same thing because I'm taking the problem. I am the problem. So I'm taking myself there. So the same thing will happen again. Although I get into contact with other people, the same things will happen again. Try to foot trick people and get things from people and not give them back, and and the same process over and over again. And it continued like that from 2015, I get back here again. Given another chance, obviously. That time now you had to go into the mental, and in psychiatric hospital is not a place that I would want myself to be. But I had to go through that process in order to get back here again. And in there was awful, meaning that the people in there that you're around and you're like scared and telling yourself, well, I hope that these people don't get in nothing like that. They can meaning the patients in there, because in there is not a nice place to be. I wasn't ready for that help. I was trying to escape reality. And my only way to escape reality is dealing with drugs. Marijuana, sniffing cocaine, drinking a lot of alcohol.
You did cocaine as well?
Yes, I did some lines. What you call sniffing lines. I used to do lines too, because it gradually went upscale all the time, right? I sniffed some cocaine. I didn't really like it, but them is things that I did to escape reality.
So in 2015, you ended back here. You were ready for the help.
Yes, but it did not work out like that because I did not apply myself. Because in order for me to want the help, I can't just ask for the help. I have to accept the help when I get it and be honest and open-minded and willing, right? And all of those qualities I didn't have at that time, right? Still running again because I have felt that when it comes for help, that it can just, you could just press a button and everything just disappear and I good again. But it wasn't things like that. It was things that I had to deal with. Right?
So you would have been here 2015. This is your third time coming, but you did not do the program in its entirety. You dropped out.
I dropped out the program again. I left. And they tell me that I would not be given another opportunity to come here because I get in chances and they would leave the chances for somebody that really need a chance. Because another thing that Verdant House doesn't do, they don't reject people from coming because they never know when it's their time and they're ready, right? That's the thing about addiction, right? It has you in it grips. And when you're in addiction grips, you can't get there. I can't get me out the grips of addiction. And it hurt me sometimes when I remember the journey, what that I went through. Anyhow, I would have been back out there again, getting jobs, losing jobs, and I would be like, I wouldn't be getting in trouble this last time. This is what really happened, right? I didn't really get into trouble. That loving mother I have, right? She decided that there's a way that she could get me back. Because they didn't coming back to treatment. At the time they couldn't come back and they didn't want to come back. She got me into court, right? And I get cold sweats when they talk about this because this was my turning point now. My mother got a restraining order against me in order for me to get to court.
Oh.
Right? Because I didn't get into trouble to get to court. So she said she can get. So I was served with a summons. And when I went to court, the magistrate asked me, why you don't behave yourself? Your mother said that you're giving a lot of trouble in the place. And she don't want you to leave the house, but she has no other choice. Do you have somewhere that you can go? And me now, trying to escape again, I said, yes, I have somewhere I could go and I could leave there by today. He said, okay, but she says you also drink and you do a lot of smoking. Or do you have a drug problem? Me wanting to escape again, I said, no, I don't have a problem. I can handle myself good. I don't have a problem. He said, that's not what I hear. We're hearing that you're giving a lot of trouble. And we're going to have to remind you again to the psychiatric hospital for evaluation. And I said, no, I don't want to go there. And he said, well, you have a seat on the bench there. You can get back to you. And it's at that time that I got a spiritual awakening. I could proudly say so. Because when I was there on that bench sitting down, I looked across and I saw the prisoners that came from prison. And they're sitting down and they said, look how you got your mother there crying. Look, why you don't go and get the help? You need help, go and get the help. And I was surprised. I said, well, they're in prison and they're telling me to go and get the help. Look at how I had my mother crying. And I said, no, I can go and get the help. And it's at that moment, I didn't know exactly, but I made a decision to do whatever I had to do to steer the course this time. And October the 5th, 2018, I was remanded into the psychiatric hospital. And I would have met people down there that I have seen already, and they would have known me, and nurses and doctors and things, and I would have let them know, I would have poured out myself to them, let them know that I have a problem and that I need help for my problem, and ask them what to do. And they told me about Verdant House. And I said, well, yes, I've been to Verdant House already. I've been there numerous occasions. And they say, well, we will send you back there again. They asked me, do you need an opportunity to go there again? I said, yes, I need an opportunity to do this here again, and I really will do it this time. They say, how do we know that you will do it this time? I said, because I am ready this time for change. And I spent close to 4 weeks down there. God protected me because I didn't get in anything with anybody, and everything was all right. I spoke to the doctor down there, and he told me, well, he's going to give me another opportunity. And I came up here. And when I got out here, I felt a bit of shame on me. I felt, because I was here already, sir,
And you dropped
to
out 3
myself,
times.
yes, I said, well, these ain't going to want to see me. The counselors ain't going to want to see me. But they welcome me with open arms. They're so welcome back. We're glad to see you here. You go and they give me everything that I needed to start with, my books. And they told me everything is going to be all right. We are going to love you until you're able to love yourself. And I felt so wonderful. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy because I had to face myself. I had to let them know what I was going through in order to get help, because I was always one of those people that would say, you ask me if I'm okay? I'm a good man, everything is okay. And they burning up inside and trying to escape reality. I could mention this. My father loved me, but he would have gone away when I was a bit younger too. All that I had struggles with because I had missed my father. And that would be all of that. I only knew that was part of my problem after opening up, being honest, and letting them know what I was going through. And they told me, well, it's all of that I have to get out, and talk, be honest. And I opened up to them and I let them know, well, this is what I was going through all of that time. And it's something else, because I thought that when I let out everything and tell people things about me, how they will look at me and everything, they say, no, we can help you. We can help you. You're the right place. And we have gone through, the other peers and things would tell me, we would talk and they would say, we went through that because we help one another here. Right? We help one another here. And the counselors are wonderful. They do a very good job. They're dedicated to their work. And they work with me because I am a miracle here sitting down talking to you. Because today the 25th, it's 3 years and 7 months that I haven't had a drink or a drug. I don't smoke cigarettes, nothing like that. I don't, in any mood or mind altering substances, I don't use.
How difficult has it been to stay away from the drugs?
Very, very difficult. Because I have been using longer than I was clean. But I have some wonderful, loving people in the fellowship that I am in. It's an anonymous fellowship that I go to meetings and they help me very much. That if I have a problem, if I have a craving, I go and talk to them. I have a sponsor because here we have tools. Here at Vernon House, they give us tools that we can use in case we have cravings, in case we have reservations to use and anything like that. I would have not really seen the pattern that I would have had coming to Vernon House. Every time a round crop over, I did not realize that I would have come into here because the people and the places was triggering me. Because I found comfort in alcohol and drugs. I used to find comfort in alcohol and drugs, right? And I won't say it's easy right now, but with the tools that they give me, I know how to handle life. No, I know how to handle situations and people. Tell me to keep away from people, places, and things. Call somebody and talk to them. Go to meetings, make 90 meetings in 90 days. Do my steps, call my sponsor. And them is things I do, right? I don't say, well, like previous occasions, well, I don't need them people because all of that there is what defeat me. My best thinking is what brought me here.
Have you been able to readjust, find employment, etc., since leaving the program?
Yes, recovery is wonderful. I have gotten back, number one, I've gotten back my family, my mother's love. My mother, she always loved me, and she's telling me you look good. I've gotten back employment, and I can manage my money now. I have a bank account with money on it. I work through certain agencies that I also counsel. I speak to people. I do motivational speeches to people that have problems too. Also, I before the pandemic, I used to go into Dodds to counsel, but we ain't started that back yet. But I am willing to give back. Right? The program teaches me that I can only keep what I have by giving it away. Right? So this is not a destination that I'm on. This is a journey that I am on. So that's why I identify as an addict, right? Because if I forget where I come from, I am always doomed to go back.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. We know it is still an ongoing journey, and we wish you every success on your road to recovery.
Thank you very much.
You're most welcome. That is one of the former clients here at Verdon House and a recovering addict who has shared his story with us. I'm Lisa Lord. Thank you so much for watching One on One. Do have yourself a wonderful evening.